This is a 2022 Triumph Tiger 900 Rally, and I have about 21,000 miles on it. So in today's video, we are going to talk about what it's been like, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and yes, there is some ugly. This is my 20,000 mile review on my personal Triumph Tiger 900 Rally. And we'll let you see for yourself whether or not you want to pick one of these up. Spoiler alert, it might not be the answer you think it is. Let's get into it. Hey guys, Bo here, YankiRides. Like I said, we're going to be taking a look at my 2022 Triumph Tiger 900 Rally. I've had this thing for just about a year. About a third of it has been off-road, third of it has been long hauls, and the rest has been commuting in the city of Atlanta. So I get a pretty good kind of barometer for where this bike is good and where this bike is a little bit lacking. So let's start off with the good stuff first. This is the 888cc cross-plane triple powering this thing. It produces 96 horsepower and about 60-something, 64 feet-pound of torque. It's got a very interesting characteristic, which I love. I fell in love with the first time that I rode it on a demo break-in ride for Triumph for their demo fleet. In fact, I switched out with Doodle. I was riding Bobber. She was riding the GT Low. And the moment that I stepped onto this bike and took off, I fell in love with the characteristics of the motor. It doesn't behave like most triples do. So most triples are whiny. They rev high, they produce a lot of horsepower, they're very spiky at the top end. This one behaves more like a parallel twin because it has an interesting firing order. There are a lot of videos on the specifics of that and the specifications. All I can say is that it behaves more like a parallel twin, which is a lot more fun down low, which is where I like to be. Now, the front end of this bike is set up quite well, actually. These are Showa front and rear. They're fully adjustable, so you can dial this in, which I have. And these massive Brembo brakes, they're way more than the bike deserves. They're Stylema, they're like top shelf, and they behave like that. There is no end to the stopping power of these things. Like I said, way more than you would need. There are a lot of things about this bike that are set up fully for like off-road traveling, and most of that comes down to the ergonomics between the seat, handlebars, and foot pegs, but also the amount of clearance that you have under here. Compared to their GT Bros, these things I think have like 9 inches of travel, but also more ground clearance. That is problematic for somebody like me. So I purchased the low seat with it because I thought, oh, I'm gonna need as much ground clearance as I can get so that I can put my feet down. And that was a mistake, because one of the first negatives that I'll talk about is this seat is not super comfortable. Now, the low seat, I could get maybe an hour and a half out of it before it started to hurt. I will say that upgrading to the comfort seat, and in this case, the comfort heated seat, has extended it to like 4.5, 5 hours. So it is an improvement, but if you're doing long hauls, the comfort on this does get a little bit dicey. But then again, it's got a specific purpose, and that is off-road riding, and in which case you're not sitting on the seat anyways. Another thing about long hauls is that engine right there. All the things that I love about it are the things that make it not so great when you're just, you know, stuck at 70 miles an hour on the interstate for 4.5 hours. It does lack a little bit in the top end, so it gets a little drony and a little buzzy when you're on the highway speeds. But for me personally, they doesn't bother me. They've got the little inserts that you can take out that help dampen, and I usually ride with these inserts in unless I'm doing off-road, in which case I'm wearing my big Revit boots anyways, so I don't really feel it. This bike from the factory, the Rally, is potentially set up as an off-road bike. It has all the makings. There's a lot of stuff that you have to get if you want to be safe extend the longevity of your motorcycle that don't come with this bike. You can see down here at the bottom, I am currently in road mode. There's a rain and off-road, which you can only use or change to if you fully stop the bike, and then a sport mode. The Rally Pro comes with two more, an off-road pro and a user mode. So what we're gonna do now is just go ahead and skip to the end of this, and that is to say, if you want an off-road Triumph Tiger 900, just skip the Rally. Because one of the biggest negatives of this bike is that the modes that you get with the Rally Pro are unavailable to you for any reason. I have been told that you can't update the firmware on it because everything's kind of tied together and the system will just brick, which is infuriating. Once you get the Rally, that's it. That is a huge miss by Triumph. And the same is true for their GT line. If you're looking at a road-focused Triumph, skip the GT. Go for the GT Pro, because you can't upgrade. It's one of my biggest negatives, and in fact, one of the few things that is almost a deal breaker. But I got a decent deal on this bike, so I went ahead and pulled the trigger on it. 20,000 miles of riding, about a third of that is off-road. So how does it perform off-road? Well, no surprise, it handles great. I switched off with a buddy of mine on his 500 EXEF. You can watch that video here or in the description. I'll leave a link to it. He said it was the suspension, everything was so comfortable.
Dude, I thought mine rides like a couch over bumps. Dude, put the kickstand down afterwards. This thing rides like a...
It's a very tractable bike. It is very powerful. You can switch off the rear or the traction control entirely. It takes a couple extra steps, but when you do, you can do things like crossing through rivers or really soft stuff and have a lot more control without this thing killing the power, because it does kill the power. The traction control, it fights with you pretty hard in the more loose stuff. But for 99% of the riding that I've done off-road, this thing has handled everything I've thrown at it, and well beyond my capabilities as a rider, and has kept me safe quite a few times. And this huge 21-inch front wheel pretty much just floats over everything. I've never had an issue where I felt like this bike did not belong in the conditions that I had put it in. I also said that a third of that was long trips, highway stints, big long miles. I've taken this bike down to Florida a couple of times. I've done a lot of highway riding, long stretches in one go. SmortCon has happened now 2 times, once in Tennessee, once in Kentucky. And aside from the fact that after 4 hours, your butt starts to get a little sore, this thing has handled it pretty well. Again, at the top end, you lose a little bit to have some of that fun down low. Gas mileage has been great. The engine isn't stressed at those speeds, just a little bit buzzy. The comfort of the foot peg positioning and the handlebars. Now, I've got a bit of a riser on mine. You guys can see that right here. It moves at 20 mil, 30 mil, or 30 mil, 20 mil. Yeah, 30 mil up, 20 mil back. That's because I'm weirdly shaped and I have a bit of a long leg syndrome. Yeah, for a short guy, I have a pretty long inseam, so that means my torso is a little bit shorter, thus my arms are a bit shorter. This bike on road has been fantastic for those longer trips. I've got luggage galore, heated seat, heated grips. I wear a heated vest, so on the colder months, which it's starting to get close to that time now, super comfortable. Everything about it for a long trip works pretty well. I'd say not as well as the off-road stuff, but still pretty good. And now for the thing most people are going to be doing. Short trips, commuting. I mean, it's a big, tall bike. It does well enough on the short trips and the stop and goes and the stoplight stuff, but that's not really what it was designed to do. And some of the limitations are my size and height. But I just think if you're gonna do a lot of commuting, this might not be the bike for you. The GT and the GT Pro probably would be better. That low end torque and all those behaviors that engine brings on the low end make it really fun. And stop and go traffic and slow speed stuff, the weight and the height kind of get away from you. It does get a little bit of exhausting after a little bit of day-to-day stuff. Anyone didn't know, I would be on the road for about 3 hours a day in traffic. I think that's 2.5 hours longer than I felt like this bike should be. The biggest thing to note is that right there is the exhaust for the radiator. That's on both sides. And when you're sitting in traffic, this thing gets hot. But overall, for all three of the type of riding that I do, this thing has been great. Great gas mileage. I get about, I average about 40. Now, you'd have to, that is an average. So, in the best of times, I'm getting like 48 to 50 miles to the gallon. On the worst of times, 25 to 30. So it kind of evens out. It just depends on what kind of traffic I'm in. Insurance is not cheap on a nice bike like this too. Something to keep in mind. Maintenance, not that bad. And most of it you can do yourself. Overall, this is the nicest motorcycle that I've owned. It might even be the nicest vehicle I've owned. It's well worth the money that I spent for it. I got a little bit of a discount because it was a demo bike, but it's, I mean, still 13 grand for a 15 grand bike. That's not an insignificant amount of money to pay for something like this. So the question is like, do you really need to spend that kind of money for an off-road bike? And the answer is no, you don't. You don't. But for the type of riding that I have been doing, it's been well worth the money. I haven't had any real significant issues with it as far as reliability. If anybody knows, we were in South Dakota, the bike wouldn't start. The same thing happened when we were in Dawsonville. It just wouldn't start, and then it threw an engine code light, and I didn't look at it at the time. If I had, I would have known. The throttle body sensor had gone bad, and the throttle body sensor and the throttle body are synced from the factory, so you can't replace one without the other. Thankfully, when we got back, our buddy Stokes at Triumph took care of it. It was under warranty. Other than that, no issues. I've had no mechanical issues with this bike. Oh, this is one of my top 3 bikes I've ever ridden, and I own it. And after 20,000 miles, the only thing that's changed is that I wish it was a bit lighter and a bit smaller. That's it though. That's the only thing that I would change. It's just the sheer size of it. The only thing that I will caution you is if you were looking at buying this bike and you want the rally, just save up the rest of the money or roll it into the financing. Don't get the rally. Get the Rally Pro. And the same thing if you're looking at the GT lineup, get the GT Pro. Spend the extra money, get the extra stuff that you need. All right, editing Bo here, over here, putting it all together. The rest of the video, the audio is unusable. Wasn't much of the rest of the video. That was the final thoughts. All I was doing was the outro, but, you know, I'm working with some pretty aged equipment. The B-roll was done with the Blackmagic, which is about the nicest thing that I own. Everything else is like 8 years old, including the Rode mic that I bought with that camera. So, in conclusion, go get one. I think I also made mention of if Triumph finally decides to release a dual sport version of that 250 with a 450 they're working on, I would definitely, probably, most likely, definitely trade it in. At any rate, thanks guys for watching. Sorry about the audio issues. It just happens when you have old equipment. I'll see you guys on the next one. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you guys on the next video. Be safe, be kind. Later.